and welcome to Author Nation. I am Melody Ann, your host. Author Nation is here to help you go from idea to published, successful nonfiction author. We are here to make sure you don't make those mistakes or get stuck or overwhelmed. So if you are in that place where you are starting a book or you're writing a book and you're stuck, please go ahead and in the description, you will find a planning checklist. AuthorNation.online is where you get it. It is also scrolling past you right now. Today, we are talking about finding your voice and telling your story. My guest, Kristen Spencer, has made her life center around her love of story. As a young girl, she turned to familiar tales anytime she needed hope. Now she uses her storytelling superpowers to help authors and business owners as a copywriter, ghostwriter, and certified copy editor. Finding the right words isn't always easy, but with the right help and confidence boost from Kristen, you can finally create the messaging you need to attract customers and readers who appreciate you and your unique voice. It's time to learn to make every word count. Let's welcome Kristen. Hi, Kristen. How are you today?
Hi, Melody. I am doing well. I am super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. I'm also super excited to be here and to have you on. It's so much fun. And so firstly, while I was perusing your social media, you do a lot of lives. You're really personal. You're really open with people, and I really love it. And one thing I noticed is at one time you spoke about your gentleness and how at one point in your life you thought, oh, I can't come across as gentle in this business world, but you've kind of let go of that and you just bring your full self. How has that transformed you and your business and your clients?
I think for me, because as a business professional, right, I'm a copywriter. That's basically my brand is built around that. And a lot of people associate copywriting with marketing. And they think that if you're in marketing, you have to be pushy, you have to be high pressure. And that never felt right for me. And so I was like, I'm not going to behave this way. I choose not to do that. I would never tell a client something like, oh, take out a loan to work with me. That's not how I operate. So I realized I'm gentle. I'm empathetic. I care about your feelings. And I decided just to lean into that. And it's meant that I have been able to work with the most amazing, emotionally healthy clients, because when I'm just my authentic self, that resonates with them. And that's the kind of clientele that I attract now.
That's amazing. So yeah, that's great. And what a great message to everyone out there, the audience and just anyone listening, that bringing you to the table, bringing who you really are to the table attracts people more like the people you want to work with, rather than trying to hide and attract people who really don't jive with you. So thank you, Kristen, for that. You're also a published author. How many books have you published?
So I have published 23 books, including workbooks, but not all of those are still published because I didn't have anyone to tell me, don't publish your first few books. So I kind of went back and either rewrote them or unpublished them after I had been writing for a few years.
Fair. So do you know how many books you have on the market right now?
I think 19.
19. Perfect. And one of the books, and the book I want to talk about today, or at least some of the things I want to talk about, is Write the Perfect Read. And I love the title. And I think this is really important for our audience, because that's exactly what they want to do. They want to write the perfect read. So who is this book for?
So this book, and I have it right here because I can't help myself. So this book is for business owners specifically who want to establish themselves as the expert in their industry, but also work with people they love working with, doing the thing that is their favorite.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about what's in the book and in the structure of the book, and just give us a little bit, give us the 2-minute, um, what's the book about?
Okay, so the book is written for someone, anyone, whether you've written a book before or not, who wants to write a book that will generate sales, but not the sleazy kind of sales, working with the people who you love working with. And it teaches you step by step what kind of stories to put in your book. It gives you worksheets that actually you can download for free that you can fill in. And it also teaches you how to build your email list, how to interact with people online, and how to generate income and sales for your brand by using your personal stories.
Nice, nice. And is it organized like chapter 1 is step 1, chapter 2 is step 2?
Of course, I couldn't help myself. And my co-author, Maria Mudokalaki, we're both like perfectionists and she's a teacher. So she's like, we need to make this so that it goes in order so that there are wins for them where they can realize, oh, I can do this. And, you know, we stole a little bit of Malcolm Gladwell's magic. I studied his frameworks and I break them down for you in the book so you know how he creates the magic he creates, but of course, giving him all the credit he deserves.
Oh, that's amazing. He's quite the storyteller as well, right? When you read his books, you can get really sucked into the stories. I still remember many of them, and still today say, oh yeah, it's something I talk about. So that's great. So if you are watching live, stay tuned. Kristen has a giveaway for us. And also, please go ahead and ask any questions you have as we go. Kristen, I want to turn our attention to storytelling. So why is storytelling, we just talked about Malcolm Gladwell and his storytelling, why is it so powerful?
Actually, so a lot of times, because I was a fiction author first, right? And I'm sure a lot of the people you work with, they also write fiction, because I find that people can't help themselves because fiction is too delicious and yummy not to write if you're already writing. But a lot of business owners would come to me and they would be like, we know you write fiction too. Can you write a fictional illustration to prove this point for me? Because I'm also a ghostwriter. I'm the ghost behind that writes things for authors when they don't have time to learn how to write over a certain amount of years. And, you know, it's a process. But I kept telling them, and now I would say, no. And they would be like, but why? And I'm like, well, the brain science shows us that when you use personal storytelling, you're creating pattern mimicking. It's actually called speaker listener neural coupling. I don't want to geek out too much, but you create a pattern in the brain of the listener that is going on in your brain. It's just slightly delayed. And it creates this intense human connection. Whereas if you use a fictional story when you're trying to help someone see why they should work with you, it's not ever going to work. And actually, it engages a different part of the brain where it puts them in the seat of the hero role, which is not what we want if we want to execute sales psychology. So, storytelling has changed my life. Honestly, like when I was younger, there were some not so amazing moments, and I would retreat into stories to give me hope. But I realized that for business owners and for nonfiction writers, it's really important to use personal storytelling instead of abstract fiction.
Yeah. And you talk about in the book that like having a time tested storytelling process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Of course. Yeah, I get really excited about this actually. So, what you need to understand is the best stories that you can source are going to be personal, but they're also going to be related to the lesson you want your reader to learn. So, you don't just pick a random story, you think about the pain they're in. And that's from sales psychology, right? My mentor, Krista Nichols, always says, whoever mirrors the pain best wins. And that's what you want to do when you're selecting your story. But it is also important that you don't, what we would call, editors would call info dump onto the reader. So you need to make sure you're concise, but you also have to have a beginning, an middle, and an end to the story. And the end needs to give them a quick win mentally. So I teach, and Marie and I teach you how to do that in the book, because we've seen how powerful this framework is. It grew our business like crazy. And then we started using it for our clients, and we just saw client after client have their businesses expand too.
All right. Let's break this down. That was a lot of information. Let's break this down just a little bit. So first off, we're using personal stories. Does the story need to be the same story that will play out for the reader?
No, but it needs to use the same emotional journey.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. And while we're talking about this, I just want to put up, you can learn more about Kristin at literarysymmetry.com. And I think you can get the book there as well, but I will ask her that later. All right. So you're telling personal stories. So for example, I work with authors, and it's a long journey sometimes to become an author, right? And one thing I happen to do in my personal life is I do a lot of backpacking, kind of hiking up mountains. And I often equate the two because I know what it's like to stand at the bottom of the book mountain and look at the top and think you need to know all the steps at the top, even when you can't see that far up. And what you really need is just that step in front of you. And I use this story metaphor all the time. So what you're saying is it's a personal story to me. It's not books, but it's that same emotional journey. So that works.
Yes, exactly. That is what you want, to where mentally they're going on the same emotional journey as you. And this is a little cheat code that I have in the book. I created this concept called emotional imagery, and it steals from traditional literature, which I have a degree in comparative world literature. So I'm always borrowing things from that. But you take some kind of imagery, right? A sight, a smell, a touch, something that's tasted, and you attach it to a feeling inside your personal story. And no one is ever going to forget your story. So like with your hiking story, you could be like, my feet were so sore and I felt like maybe I'm not going to get to the top, but I knew how it would feel once I got there, and I needed to make it to that summit to prove to myself what I already believed, that I could do it.
Yeah. That's great. That's exactly what I do. Although I usually say what I do is I look at my feet and I just focus on the next step and the next step and the next step, rather than because what I find authors do is they keep looking at the top of the mountain, trying to figure out what are those last 10 steps like? I don't know. We can't see them yet. So let's focus on the next footing. Keep your footing.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. Okay. And then you were also saying, so it doesn't have to be, it has to be personal, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. Attach an emotion to it. There was another important point.
There needs to be a beginning, a middle, and an end.
All right, but not necessarily in that order.
Well, you can mess with it. If you're advanced, you can change the order. If you're not advanced, stick to the normal order.
Right. No, I'm just, you said there's a beginning, middle, and end. And I'm just, there's a quote. So I just wanted to finish the quote, but not necessarily in that order. I think it was Hemingway who said that. All right. And not necessarily,
right?
So, but, stick to that. What can you tell us about building out your character?
So there are different theories about this. One of them is by Russell Brunson, who owns ClickFunnels, and he talks about making your attractive character. And he says that it doesn't have to be an exact reflection of you, but it should be close. Otherwise, you'll get exhausted. And I know that for a fact. When I switched to being my gentle self, the exhaustion melted away. But you need to have, this is the advice that I give. If a story is so close to you that it's still going to make you emotional in an uncontrollable way, or you haven't dealt with the emotions you felt or processed them, it's too close. You're not ready to share it yet, because then you have what I call an emotional transfer onto the audience, and they don't know what to do to help you. But if you've processed it and it's part of your journey and you've been able to turn that into a lesson, yes, you can share it. But you also are in control of your story Only you get to decide how much you share and when you share it. And you don't need to feel like, oh, well, Melody said that Kristen is very, what did you say? Authentic, right? Or open in my messaging. So I need to be like that. If you're not comfortable doing that, you don't have to do it as much as I do. You're in control. And in your book, only you get to say how much of your story you tell.
Yeah. And in our stories, in our books, should they follow the traditional, here's the context, get to know the character, here's the background, and then, they're either pushed or pulled. There's some kind of trigger that starts the story, and then there's the, all the obstacles, and then there's the climax. And then, so do we need to follow the same like pattern of traditional literature in our stories?
You can be a little bit more flexible than that. I would say it's like a mini character arc, because usually you're not building one all the way through, because you teach different concepts in your chapters. So you might have mini character arcs in each chapter where you have the story of, I didn't know this crazy thing happened and that was very upsetting or very enlightening. And then I was able to apply it by doing this next step, because that's what your reader wants when they're investing in a business type of nonfiction book.
Yeah. And so let's say that I'm writing a book, and I come across this a lot, and the authors say, but it's not like I've done this, it's that I've gone to get a PhD in this, and I've dealt with 100 clients, so I have 100 client stories. So can I use my client stories?
Well, let's steal from Malcolm Gladwell, which is friendly stealing, right? We're not actually stealing.
Yes, you're
but
like an artist.
Exactly. I have that book right behind me, literally. So what he does is, in the case where he is using someone else's story, and now I'm sorry to ruin the magic for you because you'll see it every time you read it, he inserts himself into the story and gives you his perspective on them, either by meeting the person directly or interviewing someone who knew the person. So he turns it into a personal story every single time.
And so if you're writing a nonfiction book and you're speaking about your clients, it's fairly easy to insert yourself into the story. Now, does he insert himself into the story as a guide?
He's a guide of information. He's the narrator, right? He's the interpreter between us and the person whose story that he's telling. And you definitely can do that with your clients, but I would just advise from a legal standpoint that you change the name and you change the situation so that no one can figure out who you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yes. We don't need to actually use our clients' real names. And if we do, we need to get permission to do so. Very
written
good
permission. Yes. Always
need permission. Yes. Legal permission, not just, hey, is that okay? Yeah, sure. No, you need legal permission to do it. But of course we can change names. We can change circumstances. We can still the story. So we don't have to be the traditional guide in literature. There's like that the guide role. We don't have to be the guide. We can be the narrator, but we in some way want to insert ourselves into the story so that people can see that we are part of it and we are like leading the way or showing the light.
Definitely. I mean, and we do that in our book. We did get written permission to share a few real stories, but we also talk about some horror stories, because when you're first starting out as a business owner, you will take work from literally anyone, even though you shouldn't. And you end up in horrible situations. So we do have, and we gave those characters names. As you'll see, people always ask me about this one person. And in the book, we call him Sam the Meanie. And people are always like, is Sam a real person? I'm like, yes, unfortunately, Sam is a real person.
Oh, no.
But that, his story was he waited too long to get his book copy edited. And then it was a literal nightmare. But you can use, when you're working with your clients, you are part of the story, because you're helping them in one way or another. And it's really powerful for someone else to see, oh, that person was struggling with this and you helped them. If it's not you who's struggling, it can definitely be someone else who's struggling. And you come in and you're like, well, I tried this, this, and this. Would this be a good option? And your reader is like, oh, they have options and I can choose one of these options too. And they just love it. It's so relatable.
Absolutely. So, how do we pick what stories to tell?
So I think it comes back to the question you asked earlier. What is the emotional journey that your reader needs to go on before they feel ready for help? And honestly, a lot of this is mindset work where you're assuring them, yes, you can. It is possible for you. And I always tell people, listen, if I can have a successful business that's growing every day, literally anyone can. Because when I first started my business, I did not know what I was doing at all. And that's the kind of reassurance they want because maybe they don't have anyone in their life telling them that. Or maybe the person who's telling them that is someone they love and they feel like they're just saying that because they care about me. And they don't have that same connection with you because you're an expert.
Yeah. All right. So, as I'm going through all of my stories and all of my client stories, I'm looking to match the emotional journey that the reader is going to go through for this particular chapter. But
Yes.
it doesn't have to be an exact replica of what the client's going through, just the emotional journey. This is sounding a little complex, Kristen.
That's why there are worksheets because it's easier when you see the worksheet and you see the prompts, you know exactly what to do. And we had to do that because we needed to remove any guesswork. We needed to remove the complexity so that you don't feel overwhelmed. When you look at it, all you have to do is answer one question and that spurs you on your journey. And it's a linear journey from there.
Oh, lovely. Okay, that's awesome. I love workbooks, by the way. So let's talk about voice. As a ghostwriter, one of the things that you need to do, and it's essential as a ghostwriter, and all the best ghostwriters can do this, is they actually learn the voice of the person they're writing for. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about how you do that with a lens toward the ultimate question is going to be, how can people watching, how can authors find their voice? But let's talk about how you find the voice of your clients first and then move into that.
I think it ties into what you just said. My writing voice is very clear at this point. And because I know exactly what my writing voice sounds like, I can detect if it sneaks into one of my clients' manuscripts, even for a few words. But if
Yeah.
I didn't know that myself, I wouldn't be able to write in anyone else's voice. And also, it's hard to learn your own voice. I'm not saying it's easy to hear someone else's, and I'm not exactly sure how I picked up this very specific skill. People ask me this question all the time, and I think it's because I know my own voice so clearly, and I have such an obsession with language. Like, even as we're talking, I'm listening to which words you use and I hear which words you don't use. And I listen to your tone. And it's one of those things that I can do it freakishly fast. Like, I have this program where I work with business owners and I interview them for 30 minutes and then I write them the 3 stories they need to grow their business. And they're always like, "How did you do that so fast?" And I'm like, "I am listening to you in a way you have no idea how much I'm concentrating."
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you're listening to, and I'm just going to repeat back what I'm hearing. You're listening to tone, you're listening to word choice, you're
Yes.
listening to the grammatical structures that a person might choose. You're listening to. Am I missing anything? Those seem like the larger ones.
Yeah, and then also I'm listening for their attitude, right? Especially
Mm,
it's so fun to write for snarky people because I'm not snarky myself at all. So
right,
I you put on that snarkiness jacket and write for them and tell jokes and do things I would probably never say because
right.
that's who they are.
Let your snarky out.
Yeah.
All right. So if I'm an author or I'm a new writer, for example, and I'm looking for my voice, maybe what I want to do is go back to some of the writing I've done and look at. So as an editor, for example, one of the things I do as an editor is I usually give people a list of their favorite words. Here are
Yes.
your favorite words.
Yes.
And
They showed
this
up
is
it showed up 80
grammatical
times.
structure. Sorry?
Yeah, like this one showed up 80 times in the last chapter.
Yeah. And this is your favorite grammatical structure. And this is your favorite, right? And so if you're looking for your own voice, you might want to go back and look at your writing and think, what are my favorite words? How do I start most sentences? Am I starting most sentences with there or it, or am I using the subject right away? What tenses am I using? Do I write long sentences, or do I tend to write short just going back and being curious about your own writing and learning from that. Is that one thing people could do to help them find their voice?
I feel like if they're up to that challenge, they can do that. And some people love it, some people hate it. It's definitely a polarizing thing. So for
Yes.
people who don't like that, this is what I recommend. Record yourself teaching something in a talk to speak situation. I use otter.ai, and
Mhm.
then look at the text, because the way that you speak naturally is your writer's voice, but your writer's voice is slightly more polished.
Right. Oh, that's a really good a suggestion. And it's funny because sometimes I have writers who are just stuck and they can't write. And the question is, can you talk? Yes, I can
Yeah.
talk. Then you can write.
Yeah.
Whatever you would say, write that. Yeah, but that's not grammatically correct, and it's not this and it's not that. It doesn't matter. It's still your voice.
Right.
Those are still your words. Get them out. You can, the editing process is for the polishing. So don't
Exactly.
worry about that yet. Perfect. Um, and then once you find your own voice, how can this help writers and authors? Like once they're like, oh, okay, I'm starting to settle into this is who I am. Where where do they go from there? How does this help?
I think one of the key things that happens is as you get more comfortable writing in your voice, your confidence grows. And
Mm,
there is nothing that sucks your time more than second guessing yourself.
yeah.
So, with that confidence, you're going to write faster, guaranteed. I guarantee it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about copywriting, but copy editing, pardon me. But I want to just go back to storytelling for a minute. Did we cover everything in storytelling, or is there something that we may have missed?
I will say that if you feel, if your first instinct is, I know exactly which story I should tell, try not to talk yourself out of it, because your first instincts are usually best. Don't overanalyze the emotional journey. You know what the person needs to read. Trust yourself.
Oh, it's that's okay. That's such great advice because when I was younger in school, I would write a test and then I'd go back and I go, I'm not sure that's right, and every time I changed an answer, I changed it from right to wrong every
Same.
single time. You too,
Yes,
and
exactly.
got to
Every
the point.
time.
I got to the point in my academic career. It's like, look, if you've written an answer down, leave it alone. It's more right than anything else you could possibly write after
Yeah,
this. And I did better. I started doing better because I stopped. I spent a lot of time in my childhood second guessing myself and,
same.
and suffering for it, right?
Yeah.
So, really good advice. So, Kristen, you were going to give a book away to one of the listeners. How might they win that?
Okay. So if you can write your favorite book in the chat and it shows up first, you're getting a copy. I will send one to you.
There we go. So, for everyone listening live, we want to know what your favorite book of all times is. Put your name and put the book name, and then somebody will win a copy of Kristen's book. Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. Copy editing. We were going to talk about copy editing.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, some authors. Okay, let's start here. What is copy
Okay.
editing? Let's just start with the basics.
Okay. So copy editing is your pillow on the ground when you fall. That's what copy editing is. It's someone whose interest is completely centered on protecting you by fixing the things. I'm sure you know this is the 5 C's, right? We have clarity, concision, consistency, and correctness, all in vain of the 5th C, which is communication. So we're there to help. We're like the goalie in hockey. When the puck gets past you and the defense lines are down, we will stop the puck from going into the goal. And I would say in this situation, the puck is a ball of confusion that your readers don't want to have to sort through.
Brilliant. All right. So, and let's get a little bit more technical here. What are the actual things you're looking at, like word choice? Are you looking at grammar? Are you looking at, let's get a little bit more technical there, just
Okay.
a little bit, not totally geeked out, just a
Okay,
little,
I won't geek out, I promise.
a little bit.
I'll try not to. So what I would say is we look at everything. And I know that sounds impossible, but that is what we're looking at: word choice, we're looking at diction, we're looking at syntax. We're using several giant thick books to make sure that everything in your manuscript is consistent, because when you're writing something that's 50,000 words, it is impossible to stay consistent. And you shouldn't even waste your time trying to do that, because that's the editor's job. So we're thinking about those types of things as far as story formation and making sure that content is what you want it to be. That would be a developmental editor's job.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And so you do the copy editing. I am a structural editor. So we do different types of editing, both incredibly important. Sometimes people say to me, "Oh, I'm a good writer. I don't really need this." What is your response to that?
So I always respond this way: I would never tell you to do something I don't do. And as you know, I have written 23, more than that. I can't say how many I've written because of the ghostwriting aspect, but I've written a lot of books, and I would never try to edit my own book. I have a copy editor on retainer. And actually, it's Maria who wrote this book with me. And for this book, we hired a totally different copy editor, because that's how important it is. You just can't, you get this thing called, editors call it mistake blindness, but it's actually a directed attention deficit, which we talk about in the book, because we're like, this is why you should hire a copy editor. But
Yeah.
it's impossible, because your brain literally autocorrects your manuscript after so many passes.
Yes, yes. I studied linguistics at university, and I have my work edited. So yeah, so we're preaching to the choir here, but just in case we have people out there so that aren't sure. So what happens sometimes, and I've had this in structural editing, and I'm sure you get this in copy editing. You get a book, you get some work, and you make your notes, you do what you need to do, and you hand it back, and people are upset. It tackles their self-worth.
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes you might think, oh, that's ego. Maybe, but I think that when you're writing a book and you've got this very fragile raw draft, and you're feeling fragile, and you hand that over to someone, I think there's a responsibility to be gentle, right? To use that superpower of yours, is to be gentle. So, but sometimes that happens. Sometimes a client gets something and it's upsetting. So what I'd like to know your perspective, like, what do you do to help your clients through that? And if people are working with a different copy editor who isn't as gentle as you, what can the author do?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I do myself as an author first, because this rule has served me so well. Because guess what? I am not immune to being upset, because writing a book is an intimate experience. You are working so hard, and you're being so careful to get the exact words you want out. And especially in nonfiction, you're sharing part of your life. So I have this rule: when I first get my manuscript back, I don't rip it open when my kids are running around in the living room. I set a planned time to go through it, and then I have a mental timer, and that mental timer tells me that I am not allowed to respond to any comments or corrections for 24 hours. Because the first time I go through it, it stings. But then the second time, I can be more objective, and I can remember I hired this person to watch my back and to help make sure that what I've written is the best that it possibly can be.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
I'll do the copy editor side, because this is the thing, not all copy editors are authors, so they don't understand.
I agree. This is why I'm asking you the both sides. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree.
So I went through a copy editing certification program. I am a certified copy editor. If someone tells you they're a copy editor and they do not have a certification, you can depend on the fact that they have not had any sensitivity training,
Mm,
because we spent a good chunk of my last semester going through sensitivity training so that we could help the author without hurting their feelings. And
yes.
something else I like to do is I will also leave comments that are positive. Like, if you just nailed a sentence and it's
Yeah.
amazing, I will be like, this sentence is the best. Or like, this made me laugh out loud, literally. You
Yeah.
just made me cry. I love how you tied this together.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that it's not only negative things. And also, you should get a letter or a report that helps you understand how to go through your edits. And in that letter, you should see something like, I really loved this, this, and this about your book, and I appreciate that you did this.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're working with someone who's not certified, they probably have not been trained to do this and they don't know how to do it on their own. So it can be a little bit bumpier.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And it's interesting because as a structural editor, I sit down like this with people. It's not just written. We sit down and we do a pre edit interview,
Yeah.
and we talk it through, and then then I kind of get a sense of what they, where they're at. And yeah, and I love pointing out what they're doing well, because isn't that what we need to know? What we're doing well, not just what we're
Yeah.
doing, not only what we could do better, but what we're already doing really well. So perfect. Thank you so much. So who has won the book? I'm just going to post it up here. Kenny Norquay, How to Understand the Mind by Kelsang Griazzo.
I think
Griazzo.
he said Gaiasto in the he corrected his spelling, I think, in
Oh,
the
pardon
second
me. You're
comment.
right. There we go. Thank you. And it's, yeah, Kelsang Gyatso. Thank you. Thank you. That's why I was stumbling over it. Thank you very much. But How to Understand the Mind by Ken Norquay. Ken, we're going to sort out how to get that book to you. Thank you very much for popping in your favorite book. I bet it's a really good one too. I haven't read it yet. Every book is on my to read pile, right?
Me
Every
too.
book
It's
is on my to read pile. All right. I want to let everyone know that if they want to reach out to Kristen, they can do so at LinkedIn, linkedin.com. It's Kristen Spencer Writer. That is also in the description. So in the description, you will find Kristen's website, her LinkedIn, and her TikTok, which if you are not on TikTok, if you're an author and you're thinking about being on TikTok, you don't know what it's all about, I'm going to suggest that you pop on to Kristen's TikTok and check it out, because she does an awesome job of it. All of those links are in the description. Kristen, tell us, where can we find your book?
So if you go to my website, Literary Symmetry, and you do /perfect read, you will find the digital version, which actually comes with a free class to help you find your actual business voice, and the free copy of the audiobook as well.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. And Kristen, thank you very much for coming today. I really loved our conversation about storytelling and editing as well. So if you are out there looking for storytelling, ghostwriting, copy editing, just find Kristen on LinkedIn. Thank you, Kristen, for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It was super fun.
Yes, I had a lot of fun too. All right, stay tuned. Next Thursday, we're going to be talking to Nikki Green. So come back next Thursday for that. And until then, keep writing.